For this conference series, I'm here to talk about problems in the innovation system, not only in Canada, but around the world. And that problem is that it costs more and more to produce the same amount of output, whether you measure it in terms of lives saved, number of years added to life, the output of agricultural production, how much can you grow per acre, the amount of speed you get out of a chip. Whatever we're doing, it's costing us more and more to produce at a lower rate. And that's a problem because our economies are increasingly dependent on innovation to drive economic growth. So what I want to really highlight is the role of law in trying to achieve a better output from our innovation systems. Right now, we have a system that is increasingly dependent on proprietary rights. And by that, I mean largely patent rights, sometimes copyrights, where more and more of what we think and do and come up with in terms of ideas is subject to quite significant proprietary exclusions. That is, I come up with an idea and I can control your use. And yes, I can license you and I can charge you for that use. But fundamentally, we've robbed the public system, the public domain, the area where ideas percolate, exchange at a fast rate with low costs and low barriers, and we've moved to a proprietary system where the holder of patent rights has a very strong incentive to keep them close to heart and only exchange them where there is a financial benefit to that particular actor. And the problem about innovation is the benefits always extend beyond the actor. That is, the person who may make the most use of your information, of your idea, is someone who is outside of your network, outside of your circle, who can take that idea and actually make it into something. And we see this with the printing press. The original printing press was designed to print books, often Bibles and so on, but it led in Italy, for example, to the creation of an entire industry and authorship as we know it. That is, because we could publish books relatively inexpensively, individual authors could come forward with their own ideas and publish it. That wasn't in Gutenberg's mind when he came up with the printing press. So what we have seen, especially since the 1980s, is an increased emphasis on giving control of an idea to a single entity. And the problem, as I said, is that the benefits and often the best use of that information falls outside. That doesn't mean that intellectual property rights aren't important, because once you get to market, you need these rights in order to sell the product, advertise it, improve upon it. But at an earlier stage, when you really don't know the direction things are going in, you need an active public domain. So the solution here, at least one of the solutions, is to open up or reopen up the public domain through what I call open science partnerships. And these are domains where we put together different actors, industrial, research, governmental, and we say there are no property rights here. We're going to work together to really break through some of our historical lack of knowledge. We're going to create new first-in-class drugs. We're going to come up with a completely new way of doing things, and then allow everybody to make use of that information and develop their own products later on. And the consequences of failing to do this is that we have already witnessed a decline in the economic effect of innovation on the economy. That is, we're not growing quite as quickly as we had hoped. At the same time, governments are putting larger investments into innovation. By bringing together the various actors, as I said, the private sector, universities, and government, and acting in a coordinated fashion, we can take on risky projects. We can take on those projects where it's not obvious what the solution is going to be, and we need all the skill sets of everyone involved. And so we not only need to rethink how we put together and restructure our relationships. We need to think about the role of intellectual property. And this is not tinkering with the statute or even the interpretation of the statute, but how lawyers and business people and governments and researchers think about intellectual property. No longer as something that they have to acquire at all costs, but something that they need to acquire only in certain circumstances. That they should ask themselves the question, is this the proper way to go? It also opens up a conversation about the possibility of other forms of intellectual property rights that don't impede other people to move forward. In the health field, this would be regulatory data protection, but it also applies in other ways. So we need to reset the balance, the equilibrium between open and closed innovation, and they feed off each other. Historically, the Industrial Revolution in Europe arose partly because of a dynamic between public open data and closed proprietary data. And we need to return to an equilibrium where we get the same type of benefits. So, in short, we need to rethink the way we structure innovation processes. We need to bring the actors together to reduce costs so they can easily get in collaboration with each other. They can use each other's knowledge without having to negotiate agreements that often take 6 months or a year to enter into. And once we have broken through, we've come up with these new ideas, we allow the private sector to go off, improve on those products, and create a competitive environment. A lot of these ideas originated with an economist, now retired from Stanford, Paul Davis. And he's been writing about the importance of open science to both innovation today, but also historically, and argued that putting too much of our effort into only proprietary rights and not thinking about feeding the system through the exchange of information has been a problem. And he wrote several articles, one of which is about the Republic of Open Science. And it is a journal article that takes us through the history of open science and how it arose in Europe and why in Europe in particular. Not because Europeans are any better than anyone else, it's actually because they were more disorganized and there was more competition in Europe than in other places. And he walks us through that history of how this originated, illustrates the fragile nature of this open system and how we have to continually feed it.